On December 24th, 1971, a Christmas Eve flight over the Peruvian Amazon tore apart at 10,000 feet. 91 people were on board. One survived. She was 17 years old. She fell nearly 2 miles through open sky, still strapped to her seat. And when she opened her eyes, she was alone, surrounded by the deepest jungle on Earth. How does a teenage girl with no survival training, no tools, no map, walk out of the Amazon alive? What happens to a human mind when the jungle becomes your only companion? And what does it cost a person to be the only one who made it? This is the true file of Julianekoepcke. December 24th, 1971, Lima, Peru. The airport was crowded in the way airports always are on Christmas Eve. Families pressing together, bags piled high, children restless with anticipation. Among them stood 17-year-old Julianekoepcke, waiting to board LANSA Flight 508 alongside her mother, Maria. They were heading to Pucallpa, where Julian's father was working at a remote biological research station deep in the Peruvian jungle. It was meant to be a reunion, a holiday, the kind of Christmas that no one ever remembers because nothing goes wrong. Juliane had grown up in the jungle. Her parents were German zoologists who had relocated to Peru to study its biodiversity. She had spent years at their research station, Panguana, learning the forest the way other children learn neighborhoods, its sounds, its dangers, its rhythms. She was not a trained survivalist. She was a teenager who had grown up paying attention to the world around her. She was wearing a sleeveless dress that morning, sandals, no jacket. She would survive the Amazon in that dress. LANSA Flight 508 carried 92 people, 86 passengers and 6 crew. The aircraft was a Lockheed Electra turboprop. LANSA held a safety record most passengers never investigated. The weather was deteriorating as they boarded. One passenger reportedly refused to fly, trusting instinct over schedule. The plane departed anyway. They were in the air for less than 30 minutes when the clouds changed. The Peruvian Amazon in wet season does not produce ordinary storms. It produces events, towering cumulonimbus formations capable of generating winds powerful enough to tear metal. Flight 508 entered one of these systems at cruising altitude. The turbulence began suddenly and escalated without pause. Then, without warning, lightning struck the right fuel tank. The wing ignited. The cabin began to break apart mid-air. Juliane remembered the roaring, the cabin tilting, her mother saying quietly, with a terrible calm, "That is the end." And then there was nothing. She did not know she was falling. That is the detail that resists comprehension. At 10,000 feet, still buckled into her row of seats inside a disintegrating aircraft, Julianekoepcke entered free fall over the Amazon rainforest, and she did not immediately understand what was happening. The chaos of the cabin was gone. What remained was a strange whistling quiet and the sensation of spinning slowly through open air. She was conscious. She could see the jungle canopy far below, a dense, unbroken green ceiling stretching in all directions. She was rotating, the seat still attached to her body, her mind oddly detached, not panicked, but simply watching the world turn beneath her. The fall from 10,000 feet takes approximately 2 minutes. She survived it. Experts believe the row of seats acted as an unintentional auto-rotation device, slowing the descent slightly. The jungle canopy absorbed the final impact gradually, rather than all at once. She landed in the understory, where dense growth created an uneven but yielding surface. She lost consciousness on impact. When she woke, she was lying on the jungle floor. Her collarbone was broken. Her right eye was swollen nearly shut. A deep gash ran along her arm, and she could feel, though not yet see, that something was moving inside it. The wreckage of Flight 508 was scattered across miles of canopy. She could not see it. She could not hear voices anywhere. She called out. Only silence. She called for her mother. Nothing answered but the jungle. She lay there for the rest of that day. This is not weakness. This is the first correct decision she made. Moving immediately after a fall of that magnitude, with a broken collarbone and unknown internal injuries, in a jungle with no clear direction, would likely have killed her. She rested, she assessed, and when the light changed and she understood she had survived a full night alone in the Amazon, she began to think. Her father had told her something once, a quiet instruction absorbed during years at Panguana. He said, if you are ever lost in the jungle, find water and follow it. Small streams lead to larger streams. Larger streams lead to rivers. Rivers lead to people. She found a trickle the next morning. She began to follow it. The wound on her arm was worsening. Maggots, blowflies had found the open flesh within hours, and their larvae had already taken hold. She kept moving. The wound was a clock, an infection timeline running quietly beneath everything else she was trying to do. She had no food. She found hard candy and scattered wreckage, fallen cargo, Christmas gifts broken open on the forest floor, and rationed each piece with the discipline of someone who understood scarcity. Her sandals offered almost no protection against roots and mud. Her dress became a record of everything she had walked through. On the second day, she found other passengers from the flight. They were dead, still strapped to their seats, suspended in the canopy, or lying where they had fallen. She examined them with the quiet scientific attention her parents had modeled for her whole life. She was not detached from grief. She understood that grief was not something she could spend fully, not yet. She was looking for medicine, for anything usable. She found very little. She kept moving. The Amazon does not try to kill you. That is the most important thing to understand about what Juliana faced. The jungle is not malicious, it is indifferent. It has no interest in your survival or your death. It simply continues, layer upon layer, in every direction, absorbing everything. Sound, light, bodies, wreckage, with patient consistency. The danger is not attack. The danger is that the jungle is so vast and so uniform that orientation becomes impossible and exhaustion becomes total. She moved along the stream for days. The stream became a creek. The creek widened. She followed it without rest, stopping only when darkness made movement genuinely dangerous. The jungle at night is not merely dark, it is a different world. Sounds amplified, threats invisible. the sense of exposure complete. She pressed herself against tree roots and waited for morning. Her arm was deteriorating. Heat radiated from the wound. The infestation was deepening, larvae working further into tissue. She used a thin stick to dislodge them, slow, agonizing work, performed with the methodical calm that had kept her moving. She removed dozens. It was not enough. On approximately the fourth day, she heard something above the sound of water. An engine. A search plane crossing somewhere above the canopy. She could not see it. It could not see her. The jungle roof was too thick, the white dress too small a signal against the endless green. She screamed until her throat gave out. The sound faded. She stood in the water and listened to the silence that replaced it. The search parties had covered enormous distances and found almost nothing. The official search was abandoned after several days. On the ground, a girl in a torn dress kept walking. On the 9th day, the creek became a river. The water widened and deepened, the current strengthened, and Juliane understood, the way her father had told her she would, that she was moving toward something. She entered the water and let it carry her. The river was not safe. Caimans, electric eels, hazards she had grown up knowing well enough to fear. She swam where she could and waded where she could not, keeping her wound elevated, watching the banks. On the 11th day, she found a shelter, a small open structure on the riverbank, a palm wood roof, a canoe, an outboard motor, and a container of gasoline. She recognized it as the kind of camp used by hunters working the river system. She applied gasoline to her wound, knowing it could treat insect infestations in open flesh. She removed the remaining larvae in a process that required every fragment of the focused calm that had carried her 11 days through the jungle. She slept in the shelter. She waited. The following morning, 3 men arrived, local hunters returning to their camp. They found a teenage girl in a shredded dress, alone, barely recognizable as someone who had recently existed in the world above the trees. She told them what had happened. They did not initially believe her. The story was known. Flight 508 had vanished 10 days earlier. The crash was presumed total, no survivors. When she said the name of the flight, the men went still. They treated her wound. They gave her food. The next day, they took her downriver by canoe to the nearest village. From there, a small plane carried her to a hospital in Pucallpa, the same city she had been trying to reach on Christmas Eve. She had walked out of the Amazon alive.
Julianekoepcke was the sole survivor of Lanza Flight 508. Of the 92 people aboard, 91 died. The wreckage, when investigators finally reached it, was scattered across an area so vast that full recovery took months. Her mother's body was found days after the crash. Maria Koepcke had survived the fall. She had died waiting for help that did not come. This is the detail the story cannot smooth over. Juliane's survival is remarkable and real, but it rests on a foundation of loss so complete that triumph is the wrong word. She did not triumph over the Amazon. She refused, through 11 days of quiet persistence, to be absorbed by it. She returned to Germany for treatment. She returned later to Peru, completed her studies in biology, and became a mammologist. She returned to Panguana and eventually became its director, continuing the work her parents had begun in the jungle that once nearly consumed her. Lhasa was permanently shut down. The investigation revealed mechanical failures and negligence that made the disaster entirely preventable. No survival could make that just. The questions her story leaves behind are not comfortable. Why her? What combination of knowledge, physiology, chance, and will determined that she lived when no one else did? She has never claimed an answer. She has said she does not know why she survived when her mother, who also landed alive, did not. She does not consider herself extraordinary. She is wrong. What she demonstrated across 11 days, not heroism in any dramatic sense, but sustained, grief-bearing, forward motion through absolute uncertainty, is among the most quietly extraordinary acts of human survival ever documented. She fell 2 miles through open sky. She walked out of the Amazon, and she spent the rest of her life not fleeing the jungle that broke her, but returning to it, studying it, protecting it, understanding it on its own terms. That is not escape. That is peace made with the place that almost killed you. If this story moved you, if it made you sit with something difficult and true, consider supporting the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and join us for more true stories of survival, resilience, and the extraordinary limits of the human spirit.